says, and therefore saying the Brisa also raw and he has to be Admon. Again in the Brisa you have like a meal of food. Tana, let's analyze this. When is this so? When is this so? Says the Gemara. Gola. I'm not talking. I say when is all of this said? Right? Exclusively the Brisa. And you came in the goat here. But with a Kitana, with a minor, we will force him. We will force him. So you know it says, forcing the man. Force who? Force who to do what? He made the if ultimately at the end of the day we're going to forcing the father to pay off. So they say it makes much more sense to force the father in a case of Ebola than it does to force him in a case of Ebola. Why? Because once you're talking about a case of Ebola, promised money. Right, Raphael's promised money to Ruben. What's the allotted rate of that promise? It's not there. It wasn't kind of numerous. So if you're going to be in a case where you're forcing the father to pay out, then it's more sense to force the father to pay out in a case where his goal of brother paid for it. So the Gemara says, they play about it. And the Rabbah hoping the foul. Now the Rabbah says, no, what it means is you force the husband to give it back. So they'll say, Allah also turn out a case of a Kitana. Tells the rich of Kitana. And it's just a Kitana. Ultimately, again, not arguing. Then Allah for the nice in a piece of Kitana to force the husband to give it back. We'll see how that plays out in the Rambam just a little bit. One of these Kitanas, especially the piece of it. So let's finish this. Ultimately, go back to the Rambam. So Amar Yitzchak ben Elazar Moshe the Pisgah. Come up and Shana Gamliel Lo Anis Kivei Admon. So they say now we're going back to the Mishnah. Any time that you find that Rabbi Gamliel says, right? Any case where you find that Rabbi Gamliel said that halacha follows Admon, halacha Gamliel says the halacha these follows. Only Rabbi Rothschild, even if the Brisa, it's actually even in the Brisa just in the Mishnah. In other words, now we're saying whenever Rabbi Gamliel says the halacha follows Admon, the halacha follows Admon. So is that true just in the Mishnah and the Brisa as well? Are they need coming on the Mishnah? Did I say just in the Mishnah? Listen to what I'm saying. I said any place means what? A Mishnah or a Brisa. Any time that the Gamliel says the halacha follows Admon, the halacha follows Admon. Incredible. I'm going to say on the Yomga, based on halacha, don't say both. Right, ultimately, I say this now, but the serious is in the Rabbi as well. In the two situations, ultimately again, where based on Shamar Hanan, Yotzebo, right, Rabbi Yochanan and Zach, I said that halacha follows Hanan, Shiva Dam Shamar Admon in halacha Yotzebo, but ultimately again, the 7 cases where Admon said the halacha, and the Gamliel said that the halacha like Admon, the halacha does not follow Admon. So what does this mean? Even after Shnei Dram Shamar Hanan halacha also Yotzebo, there's an English like this, the two halachas that Hanan brought down, and ultimately again, Yotzebo, those who classify like Hanan, halacha follows them. The Shiva Dam Shamar Admon, in halacha also, the Yotzebo, the 7 cases that are brought up in the name of Admon, the halacha neither follows Admon, nor like the ones who classify like Admon. I don't know if you start when I was in the Sia. Rabbi Shemar Rabbi Gamliel Ron as Shiva Admon halacha. We just said before that any time that the Gamliel said, I see the work of Admon to be correct, that the halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel, the halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel, Admon, and those who pass away, which halacha is what it means to say. Today's one Shana Hanan halacha knows in the two situations where Hanan said halacha, the halacha follows him, and those who classify like the first part of the said Shiva Dram Shana Admon in halacha Yotzebo. So we said that the 7 cases where Admon brought down this halacha does not follow him. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, in halacha Yotzebo, the halacha doesn't follow those who quote him. Hachimo, so halacha b'kulu. It sounds like it was just Admon by himself. That halacha would follow him. Or Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar Moshe the Pisgah, we also understand in these cases that's happening. Like all these Mishnayos. There is Admon stating the halacha, and then you have the Gamliel weighing in that the halacha follows automatic Yotzedo. It's very nice suggesting maybe there's a distinction between when Admon says a halacha himself versus when you have Rabbi Rothschild coming along and saying, oh, the halacha follows it. I, Bahamar Yitzchak, and Razim Yisrael, this year. Hamakom Shamar Rabbi Rothschild, Ron asked if the halacha to go. So, but we just said, whenever Rabbi Rothschild says, I see the words of Admon to be correct, that the halacha follows him. So the Gemara says, Amar in, no Amar no. It sounds like the halacha only follows Admon when Rabbi Rothschild voices his support. So if Rabbi Rothschild doesn't voice his support, then the halacha won't follow Admon. Halacha goes on to say, Neitzar Shana Karan halacha Knosek Yotzei, as it goes to say. In two situations, the two things that Hanan said that the halacha follows. In the two cases where Hanan quoted the halacha, Yotzei, others supported him, ultimately the halacha follows him. Shiva Dvarim, Sha'amar Admon, Yeshman Shalach K'mosek Yotzebo, Yeshman She'in Halach K'mosek, Elok Yotzebo. The choice is, but by Admon, there are some situations where halacha won't follow him. Other times that the halacha will only follow him when he's quoting in the name of others. There wasn't any place where the Gamil said that Allah follows Admon, that Allah follows Admon, but not necessarily in the other pieces about it. So the Gemara is essentially just trying to go back and forth, trying to figure out, do we find the principle that can apply to the readings of Admon and on the other side? We're going to see the halacha of Maisa. There is no overarching principle. In fact, each of these pieces are reckoned independently. We're going to see this over. So Rabbi said, halacha l'maisa, let's close out this sugya. How do we pass it? This is really a great case. Money's promised, and what happens? Money is not paid. Money's not paid. Now the only problem is, at the time of default, what's the status of the marriage? The status of the marriage? Kedushin has already been done. So now we have a problem. So you're saying, if you default, what Kedushin fine? So then what? Don't get married, right? You gotta go home. That's it. The problem we have over here is the default happens after Kedushin before we see it. Furthermore, two cases of default. What are the two cases of default? Case A, father default. Case B, daughter, wife default. We'll say machlokes, Admon, Chachamim. Then there's a further machlokes, Mishnah and the Brisa as to whether machlokes is about. So I'll say, here we go. Rama Baskins. Ochos Ishos. Parak of Gimel. Halacha Tes Zayin. I was saying, I was asking me a couple weeks ago. I was taking a Rambam and I'm shocking at it. So this is the only thing for the Rambam Mishnah. And generally, the derech of the Rambam is that the Rambam's formulation of halacha is often much truer to the text of the Gemara. So, when you just try to understand halacha l'maisa from the Gemara, the lesson of the Rambam often tethers you to the sugya much more, whereas the Shulchan Aruch already is a distilled version of the halacha. So again, the bottom line is say the same thing. Listen to what the Rambam says. Here we go. Great case. Apostle goes to the hospital. So this is great. So here's how the Shulchan sets up the case. Right? So Rachel, what happened? I think Rachel's going to marry Ruben. Rachel's father will call him Yaakov. Right? Rachel's father commits $10,000 to Rachel's husband, to Ruben. The Halach Ha'av Medina Akaros. The father relocates to another country. Sorry? Another place. He goes on, right? Only he normally found, and we look at Sati Alatz. Ma'an Yichololasos, O Kinos Belong, O Patrain Pizza. So those say, number one, you constantly write Admon in the Mishnah. When it was the father who defaulted, Rachel says to her husband, I didn't include you. Either divorce me or marry me. Right? But don't keep me on the list. So they say that's halacha l'maisa number one, like Amar in the Mishnah. So that's an interesting halacha l'maisa. You do possibly like the woman in the Bryce's case. If she is the one who made the commitment, then ultimately she has to figure out a way to honor it. he has no obligation to do anything until she figures out how to honor this commitment. So remember again, this is where she made the commitment. Remember, Admon's out for her. Was that remember again? What was Admon's out for her? What was out for her? I didn't promise. I know it was me, but I'm an extension of my father, right? In other words, so when I say I promise you, my father, so the Rambam asking, like the Chachamim in the crisis case, only that when she makes the commitment, Rachel herself makes the commitment to Ruvain, and then defaults, Ruvain to keep a hope out of a fiduciary until she comes up with the money. And ultimately, again, doesn't have to either marry her or divorce her from you. Once again, this is the legal rule. Moral, ethical. Should a man ever keep a woman in a relationship over money? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, if she says, give me more time, I'm happy to go and try to figure out how to that's fine. She wants the time. But again, this is the legal ruling, not the more ethical or ethical. Okay? There we go. So I say, Allah for myself, we can't like Adnan the Mishnah, therefore again, a father defaults, Ruben can't hold Rachel in a relationship. If Rachel defaults, he has the ability to go into all the entire relationship. Incredible. Mishnah both sides. Very interesting case. Or Allah saw the Chazor. Okay, so let's give the background. Let's look at Rashi. First Rashi in the Mishnah. First Rashi in the Mishnah. So let's say in the short lines of Rashi, 2, 4, 6, 7 lines into the short lines. Rashi says, Or Allah watch this. This is fascinating. Ruben ma'arer al sadr shebiyad Shimon. So let's say, so here's the case. Shimon has a field. Ruben is claiming the field belongs to me. It was stolen from me, and you bought it illegally. Now again, he's not accusing Shimon of being complicit in the theft. He's just saying, Shimon, you people in the field is really mine. Okay, fine. Now watch this. Ruben the Hara said he should get Shimon. Come on, Levi Shemach on the path doesn't mean that. Okay, so here's the case. Right? You've got Ruben, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon is in current possession of a field that he bought from Levi. So Levi sold Shimon a field. Ruben says, Shimon, that field you have, that's my field. That's my field. Levi stole it from me and sold it to you. Okay, here's the wrinkle. The Mishnah says, Fasara means, they'll say that when Levi sold the field to Shimon, he wrote the documents. And one of the witnesses on the bill of sale is Reuben. So Reuben is a witness on the sale document from Levi to Shimon. And now Reuben, who's one of the witnesses, says to Shimon, father of the field is stolen. So let's say, so now obviously, what's going on exactly? Right, so Reuben is claiming, so Shimon, the field you got from Levi, Levi stole it from me and sold it to you. And now we can see that Reuben himself is one of the witnesses on the bill of sale from Levi to Shimon. So what's the halacha here? Admon Omer, Admon says it's not a problem. You say to Reuben, so obviously you ask Reuben, I don't understand. If the field, if Levi stole the field from you, then why would you agree to sell the Mechira? Why would you agree to sell the bill of sale? Admon says there's a perfect answer for this. Shini Noachni, Hayisha Kasha Mechira. So let's listen to this. Because Reuben could say, listen, Levi is a gangster. Like Levi is a thief. Right? Levi is a strong guy. I knew I never had any chance of getting my field back from Levi. And Shimon, I know you. You're a reasonable guy. So I figured if I could get the field away from Levi to you, Shimon, now I have a better chance of getting back my stolen field. That's why I agreed to sign on the bill of sale so I could get it out of Levi's hands into your hands. Incredible. Listen, brother, I'm just saying, like, this is so great. This is incredible. Listen to this. The Chum say, no, come on, cut it out. Even as if you so, what are you talking about? Ruben, if you come forward with a claim that the field that Shimon currently has is stolen from you, that's fine. Okay, I say, once you're signing, once you're not a party, but once you're a witness to the transaction, you've lost any right to claim that this property belongs to you, even as if you said. So take a look at Rashi. Actually, even as if so, the whole of the chasam, hold the shit in law is essentially what that comes is like this. The act of signing on a document, or the act of witnessing a document of sale, a transaction, sale transaction, is effectively saying what? This field has nothing to do with it. You're giving up any rights to the field. So there was a fundamental matter of this. On the flip side, I saw a similar affair. Sorry, on the flip side. I saw a similar affair. So let's say, look at this case. I saw a muhsad got similar affair. שלא מוצא לראובן זה האור עליו, אלא לאיש אחר, היה מוכר סודה מצד זה, ומיצר לו ארבעות מצרי הסודה. חסר לו במצרים, מיצר פלוני סודה שלי, ועשה סודה זה. Let's say I watch this case. So let's say for a moment that Reuben now owns the disputed field, right? I'm sorry, Shimon, right? So Shimon owns the disputed field. So now, what does Shimon do? Shimon sells another piece of property, right? So let's say now, let's call the disputed field field A, right? So same case, right? Reuben bought the field from, Shimon bought the field from Levi, right? Then there's Reuben, of course, is claiming that Levi stole the field from him and now sold it to Reuben. Sold it to Shimon, That's one more time, I'm going to get this right. Right, so what's this? So again, remember, Levi sells a field to Shimon. Right? In the back of all of this, you have Reuben claiming that Levi really sold that field to him. And now, all right, stole that's not right. Levi sells the field to Shimon. Good, beautiful. Reuben now is claiming that the field that Shimon bought from Levi was stolen from him by Levi. Okay, so that was case one. And case one is where it turns out that Reuben himself is an aid on the bill of sale from Levi to Shimon. Okay, so now what do we do with that? So again, according to Admon, so Chachamim say that's it. You've lost any claim, you signed on the star, you've lost any claim. Admon says no, there's still another claim. Reuben can claim. It's easier for me to get the field back from Shimon than it was from Levi. Fine. Case two is Reuben. So Shimon is signing the field. So let's call disputed field is field A. Shimon is selling field B. Field B. Fine, no problem. So let's say off in the way, when you sell a field, if there is a field that is next to other fields, then you would identify the field that you were selling is by identifying the other fields all around it. Right? I'm selling the field B that is bordered by fields A, D, E, so in this case, Shimon is selling field B. But in the document of sale, he expects, he says field B borders on my other field, field A. Field A. So in this case, field A is being used as a demarcation point, as a border. So right, field A, the dispute is not being sold at all. But it's being used to identify field B, which is the transaction. So now Reuben is using field A, right? Sorry, Shimon, thank you. Shimon is using field A as just to identify the border of the field that is being sold. Now, what says Reuben is signing on this document also. Reuben is signing on this document. So now, here's the shaila. Now, in this transaction, in this document, so when Shimon is selling field B, he's also what? So to speak, solidifying his ownership over field A, because he's using field A to identify one of the borders of field B. Reuben is claiming that this field A was originally his, signing on his document. So So now Bill says, now what's going to happen after this is over? So now Reuben is going to want to come back and say to Shimon, by the way, field A is mine, which was stolen from you by Levi who subsequently sold it to you. The Mishnah says no. Saw Simon, La'afar, Ibn Esifusai. At the end of the day, even Admon agrees, which is interesting. Even Admon agrees in this case, that once Reuben signed on this type of star, which used the contested field as a border for the field being sold, everyone agrees that Reuben has relinquished any further rights to claim that the field is his. Okay, interesting. Let's go. I'm Rabbi. Okay, let's go back to that first case. Great. Let's go back to the first case. Please, not too long. Good. Let's say so. No, but the truth is, I realize that this we actually have to stay on target because the truth is, we have Shkodesh is Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So the truth is, Tuesday and Wednesday bandit are just a little bit, and Monday, a little bit long. So we gotta stay, and we only have 45 minutes on Tuesday, Wednesday, so, but we're gonna be fine. So let's say, so here we go. We'll say so. All about advices. We'll say now we're focusing on case one. So once again, let's just get back to case number one. Right? Shimon purchases a field from Levi. There's a document, right? And the document that says that Levi sold the field to Shimon. One of the witnesses is Reuben. Reuben then comes after the sale is complete, and Reuben comes to Shimon and says, Shimon, the field is mine. Levi stole it from me. What? You signed on the document. So again, Chachamim say, sorry, Reuben, you no longer have any claim because Halacha Mesa, you signed on the document. Sorry, you were a witness. We're done. Admon says, no, Reuben has a claim. Yes, I signed the document in order to get it out of Levi's hands. Your hands shouldn't because I felt I had a better chance to appeal things back on the line. Fine. Someone Rabbi says, Lo Shano Ela 8. That's only true. Like all of this is only true. If Halacha Mesa, Reuben signed or is the Machlokas, there's only if Reuben signed as a witness. About Dayan Lo Reuben asks this is fascinating. So let's say if this is really incredible. So if Halacha L'Maisa, Reuben served as a Dayan, judge, everyone agrees that he could still make the claim of fact, even though he was the judge over the document. What is that? What? Who is the judge in this case? Look at Rashi about Dayan. Sherubish Dayan, if you were based in the Kaimo, the Mishpat Kiyim Shtaris, Sha'idin Barin in the Ksab Yadam. והדיין הם כל משטרה דינן נפקא לקבנה והסידו סעדיה חסינו סערה והשינו לקבנה. So let's say, watch this. Let's say again, they come to base certified document. Kiyim Shtaris, we've spoken about certification document. Again, what is Kiyim Shtaris? The danger of documents. On one hand, in Halacha, documents, right? When you have a signed star, so that's incredible. The problem is somebody go ahead and forge, right? Did you forge your star? Sure. So there's a concept of star certification. We call it kiyum shtaris. What's the concept of kiyum shtaris? You bring your star to Beis Din, right? The Beis Din takes a look at it. The Beis Din brings in testimony or brings in the witnesses to certify that is that is their signature. You write a little pen click, right? You write a little either on the document itself or an attached document, and done. The star is certified. So this is incredible. So Abai is just like this. The Machlokes Admon and the Chachamim in the first case of the Mishnah is only though Reuben signed as a witness on the transaction. But if he was a diamond on the big case that certified the document, that does not erode his ability to later claim that the field was stolen from him. Why, Rabbi Say? This is actually fascinating. We tell you Rabbi Chia, Ein ha'ibn person al ashtar ela imkin pareh. Ava, on the base, Ava ha'gayenu person Ava tishavet pareh. We'll say actually incredible. When you witness a transaction, like when you sign as an aide, we'll say, what are you signing up? What are you signing on? You're signing on the validity of the transaction. Right, that's what you're signing on. That I witness this transaction. This transaction is binding, valid, and legal. When you're a dayan for kiyum shtaris, they will say, what are you certifying? What are you certifying? Signatures. You are not certifying the transaction. In fact, the dayan, sometimes by kiyum shtaris, the dayanim aren't even reading what's in fact. Right? Because I'm not certifying the transaction. I have no idea about the transaction. Kiyum shtaris is there to simply to certify the signatures on the document itself. But it has nothing to do with it. It's so fascinating. So fascinating. So you can have the situation of Kiyum shtaris, which makes sense, I say, because otherwise, the Kiyum shtaris requires a whole certification of the transaction. But what's the point of the shtar? And what does the shtar do? The shtar, right, the edus on the shtar locks in the transaction. Kiyum shtaris certifies the signature. So this is incredible. So they'll say, in the case where Reuben was a dayan for Kiyum shtaris, so now let's play this out. Right, so Levi sells a field to Shimon, and they drop a document, and now they want to bring the document to Beis Din for certification. Reuben is one of the dayanim on the Beis Din to certify. Right, Reuben's Beis Din certifies the document, and then after it's certified, Reuben says to Shimon, by the way, the field is stolen from me. Everyone agrees in that case. Reuben has a valid claim. As we see, Reuben has a valid claim. Obviously, saying something was stolen from you is not a claim. Right? I mean, it's a claim. What it means is Reuben now has the right to what? Pursue that claim. Right? So again, why? And everyone agrees in that case. Everyone agrees in that case. Why? Because Reuben's acting as a valid for shtaris has nothing to do with the transaction. All Reuben was doing was just saying, oh yeah, the signatures, we can say we can speak, you guys recognize the signatures, fantastic. Good, sign it up, right? And then we're done. Certified, we're done. So everyone agrees in that case, so there's no way erodes his claim to go ahead and pursue the stolen, right, the stolen claim, the claim for that stolen claim. Sha'in came when he's a witness to the actual transaction, sale from Levi to Shimon. In that case, again, part of signing on a shtar is what? You are claiming the transaction itself is valid. When you say claiming the transaction is valid, you can't go ahead and not claim that same person is claiming for you. Admon says, yes, I can. The transaction was valid. In other words, yes, Levi sold to Shimon. And at the end of the day, it's my life. Good. So says the email. But I saw a similar act. I was guessing next case the Mishnah was, but I remember again. Right? So same case, but let's say not that same case. In this case, Shimon purchaser, or Shimon purchased contested property as well as parcel A. Shimon is selling parcel B and uses parcel A to identify the borders of parcel B. Reuben himself signs on that shtar as well, or not as well, but Reuben sells on that shtar. The Mishnah says everyone agrees that after he sells on that shtar, he no longer has the right to pursue anything around this building. That parcel is there. No, buyers. Those show that's only true ultimately. Rashi said, "Lo shara la'achad." Dafka nafek masnisin simen la'achad. Aval asa hamuchzak ba simen li'atzmo shalubein za'ora la'atzmo. Listen to this. That's only true when what? When Shimon is selling the parcel to someone else. What happens if Shimon is selling the parcel to Reuben himself? Shimon is selling parcel B to Reuben. And what happens to be in that sale, Shimon uses parcel A, which is the contested property, as a border identification. But ultimately, in that case, even though Reuben, right, even as Reuben did not go ahead and use out his ability to reclaim parcel A. Why? The Amar, even though as he would say, I would not agree to this, or have a Muslim and ultimately, again, Shimon did not sell the property. In other words, if I say, the concern over here is that if Shimon knows that Reuben is going to be claiming parcel A, he's going to be reticent to what? Selling parcel B. So Shimon, right, Reuben wants to buy parcel B. If I lodge my complaint now, I'm not going to get parcel B. It's certainly, again, even aside parcel A, so the Gemara says, not just telling me. So what could Reuben have done? He probably remain on my God. So maybe what they say. Ruben could have found his right before he purchases parcels of beef from Shimon. For the side of this, so what tell you guys. Like I'm purchasing parcels of beef from Shimon. In a transaction, Shimon is saying that parcel B, right, orders on Shimon's other parcel A. Guys, I just want to tell you, Ruben is saying like a sidebar. I'll tell you guys. You might also still think about saying anything now. He's not allowed to this transaction. Maybe that's what we should say. Make him a raw, not fair. Like, let him go. You know, says, yeah, that'll work really well. Chavra is like, the Chavra is like. This is weird. Your friend has a friend. Friend of your friend has a friend. Which I will say is another way of saying, don't rely on anyone's confidentiality. Right? So the nice again, if Ruben says something so that he can confidence to the witnesses, they're going to say something, and what's going to happen? It's going to cause the whole transaction partially to fall together. Good. The message is follows. So the Papa is like, Aruda saw similar effect. So what says now? Listen to this. In this case, so the case over here is, so let's go back. So what's that? So this is just a unique case over here. So remember, let's go back. The Mishnah said that in the case where Ruben is now signed on a shtar, right, is a witness to a document where Shimon is selling parcel B to another party, and in parcel B, he's using parcel A, the contested parcel, as one of the borders. And Ruben signs on that document. Ruben gives up his right to any more claim parcel A. That's only true. That now Abai gives a qualification. That's true if Shimon was selling it to another party. But if Shimon was selling it to Ruben himself, so Ruben doesn't object to the use of parcel A as a border, that's because Ruben doesn't want to call into jeopardy the whole transaction. Fine. So now go back to the original case. Who does that? So let's go back to the Mishnah's original case. Okay, so the Mishnah's original case. So I'm not going to say now. So Ruben is on the shtar where Shimon is selling parcel B using parcel A as a border. So what happens? Here are the shepherds. So I say after the transaction happens, now what happens? So Ruben claims, by the way, parcel A is mine. Parcel A is mine. But what happens? Shepherds, then he died. Ruben died. Right, so Ruben died. Right? Right? Ruben died after raising the objection to the ownership of parcel A. Okay. What happens? The opening up the truck. So now again, so after Ruben passed away, right? Either Ruben indigenous that is beforehand or the basin appointed an apotropos. Now there's an executor of Ruben's estate. Okay. So Asa Apotropos coming with Abaye. So the apotropos came before Abaye. Amalei saw similar. So now what happens? The apotropos is coming. Why is he coming? The apotropos is saying, listen, before Ruben died, Ruben claimed that your faith belonged to him. So the apotropos says, I am coming to follow up on that claim. Okay, so Abai says, listen, there's no claim. Listen, Krishna. Amalei saw similar after, even as if so. We already learned this case. Ruben signed onto this document where Shimon used field A as a border identification for field B. And it says once you do that, you show how you relinquish all of your rights. Nothing more to talk about. To which the apotropos says, you're right, but Amar Hava Avason Yasmitayim Avatayim Ba'amar Helem Echarasisi. Very interesting. So I will say, so the apotropos says, if Ruben is still alive, but Ruben would say was yes. I signed on a document where Ruben used field A as a border for field B. It's really the only thing I was agreeing to was that perhaps Shimon owns a narrow strip of field A. A narrow strip of field A. That's what he owned. That's what he owned. So he goes, anyway, Shabbat Hamlet. So that's a good Torah. Then Rabbi Yochanan, Hava Aman Kalan Sisi Leka. Now, so we'll say it's actually very interesting. That the claim over here is that halacha l'maisa right? That if I go ahead, Rabbi Rothschild says, let's say I sold you a field, right? The field is mine, and the only thing I sold you in that field was a narrow strip. Such a claim could actually be made. So the Gemara is supposed to see what's happening over here. So in other words, Ruvain signed on this document that where Shimon was selling a field to another party. Shimon was selling field B, and field B was sold with a border identification of field A. Ruvain signed on it. After Ruvain signed on it, the transaction happened. Ruvain said, by the way, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi. After that, Ruvain dies. Apotropos comes along and says, tries to sign up the affairs of this thing. And the Apotropos, listen, Ruvain claimed this stolen field was his. Abai says, that's fine, field A was his. He says, that's fine, but it's a Mishnah. Right? Ruvain signed on that document. That document using field A as a border for field B, you have to give all rights to the field. To which the Apotropos says, remember, I'm taking this field with a claim. All Shimon really owned in that field was just a narrow strip. That's what he was identifying as the border. To which Abai says, that's a good kind of. But seal hard you in your house, ultimately again, you still should have to go ahead. So in other words, now Abai says the Apotropos, even if that's a good claim, so that's fine, but you still have to leave in Shimon's possession a narrow strip. So Avi Alod, live particular. So listen, here's the problem. On that narrow strip, there was a line of palm trees. Made that narrow border strip pretty valuable. So Gemara says. So I don't know that you have a yes, Mikayim have a toim va'amar Hazarti v'lakachti yemenu. This is great. Yes, it's good. Trouble by the way. Now the Rebbe says, if Reuben was alive, he could claim, while it's true that I sold that border strip back to Shimon, I then subsequently repurchased it. Abai says, he's up. I was shocked at the saying, good. Then Rabbi Yochanan, so we'll say ultimately again, Reuben were to claim, I sold it, but then I repurchased it with you believe. But we'll say the reason that is because this is Rashi says, Pesha Asar, Pesha Hitya. In other words, we'll say the king's over here says, look at Rashi, Naaman. Here's the case, just get this mentality. Naaman, Pesha Asar, Pesha Hitya. The Me'achar Sheish, Edim, Shais, Shalom. So we'll say, here is where, remember, Shimon sold the field, maybe sold the field to Shimon. Reuben, and then again, it gets more complicated. But now what happens? So now you have Reuben, then you have Shimon, here we go. You have Levi selling the field to Shimon, field A. Okay, fine. Now what happens? Shimon sells field B to another party. But in that transaction, he uses field A as a border identification. Reuben signs on that shtar, that bill of sale that Shimon makes to the party of field B. Afterwards, what happens? Shimon, so Reuben said, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi and sold to you, Shimon. So remember again, strict halacha in the Mishnah is we don't believe Reuben. You sign on that document, we don't believe. But we'll say, in this case, it's becoming a bit more complicated. In this case, what happens is, Reuben goes ahead and claims the field is stolen. Not only that, Reuben brings witnesses. He brings Avis. That's the bank of the He brings witnesses. Now they say, after he goes to the witnesses, what happens? He dies. Okay, now what happens? Apotropos comes to Abai. Apotropos says, listen, I'm here to help with this claims. Abai says, there is no claim. It's a Mishnah. Reuben signed on the document. Apotropos says, but he has Avis. Abai said, this is no example. Essentially, the Avis is negated in the face of what? Reuben's signature. In other words, once Reuben signs on that document, he effectively signs away his rights. Here's the Apotropos says, no. What you understand is, he actually went ahead and sold that, right? He sold to Shimon a strip of land. Okay, so now what you're telling me is When Reuben signed the document, he wasn't yielding his rights to the rest of the field. What was he acknowledging? That Shimon owns a strip of land of field A that borders on field B, but that in no way is yielding his rights to the rest of field A. That's good. But Abai says, okay, that's fine, so you can pursue your claim on the rest of field A. But what? But you have to go ahead and at least leave in Shimon's possession what? The strip of land. To which Apotropos says, but one second, there's more to the story. Reuben bought back the strip of land from Shimon. He bought it back. To which Abai says, which is very good, right? The Torah says, this is a pasha, also a pasha, right? Because the only way you knew about the sale was how? Was through Reuben, right? In other words, right through Reuben. We didn't know about the sale. Without the sale, all you would have is what? Abe was saying that the mice of the field was stolen from Reuben. So now Reuben's sort of situation is telling us that a sale happened of the strip. Now Reuben's further clarifying and telling us after the sale occurred, Reuben bought it back from Shimon. It's a pesha, also a pesha in which case Reuben slash the Apotropos should be believed. It turns out that Reuben should really walk with assuming he could prove his claims that he should really be able to walk with the field in its entirety, including the strip of palm trees. Incredible. Rabbi is what's the rest of the story. Rabbi, I man the Mocha Apotropo, Mokim Ki Had Yadela, I think this was the aspect. Because the entire takeaway is you gotta get an Apotropos like this. Right? I would say this is you gotta surround yourself with good people. Like this Apotropos Rabbi says, knew exactly what he was doing. Good. So I would say, so for our purposes, Allah for my son. How do we pass this? This is a complicated case. That is a very complicated case. Remember again, that what we have essentially embedded in this case is a couple of different cases. Just because that is so very quickly. But I'm a pastor. This is an Hilchos Owen B'Shirtam, Perek Tes Zayin, Hilchos Aleph and Beis. We're not going to have time for everything. I'm going to leave out the Talon case. I'm just going to give you the Mishnah. Here it is. Reuben Shemach on the Shimon Saga. Reuben sent the piece. Reuben sold the field to Shimon. The higher lady made the extra office. Rabbi changes the names. I'm going to keep it like we had it, right? So it's like, so Levi sold the field to Shimon, and Reuben was one of the witnesses on the shtar. And what happens? Subsequently, right? Reuben claims after this transaction occurs. Reuben claims like what? That Allah Levi stole it from me. Ain Shomer. The Rambam passes like, no. Even though you remember again, you're going to claim, yes, I signed on it because I wanted it to go from Levi to Shimon because I feel a better chance getting my field back from Shimon and from Levi. The Rambam says, please close. Allah for myself. Right? Allah for myself. There's absolutely nothing to talk about once you are parties to the transaction. Right? Once you are a witness on that shtar, you have effectively ceded and yielded any right that you have. However, the Rambam says, if Reuben acted as a dial, Shtaros, he does not yield or cede any future rights. Again, going back to the distinction of the Allah an aid certifies the transaction. A dial only certifies signature. So it was like, Allah for myself, don't pass like Admon is literally pass like that. There's more, much more. Again, both was playing Nikon. Harakazai, Halachas, Aleph, and Beis. Take a look at it after your own halacha. Interesting. But that's the halacha that's good. Mishnah, quickly. Mishnah, halacha, the Derech, Sadeo. So, again, it just gets better. Listen to this case. And I will say, by the way, you ask yourself, what does this have to do with Ksubas? So, first of all, it's so good. Right? That's answer number one. That's answer number one. So, remember, again, the reason, just so you know, seriously, the reason why we're doing this is because, remember, the way this parak started off, with the rulings of Admon and Hanan. And remember again, it started off with a discussion about Mizonos, that's which the Ksubas. Now we'll say we're just going through all of their rulings. Watch, this is a great case. Misha, Allah says, we'll say, watch this case. Reuben goes overseas. Now Reuben owns a field. Now we'll say, interestingly enough, the case over here is Reuben's field is landlocked. which means that the only way he was ever able to get into his house, he had a right of way. He had a right of way with someone. So what happened? So Misha, so says, now what's the problem? He comes like, he's been away for a while. He can't remember the right of way. Where is my right of way to get into my field? And of course, as one can imagine, none of the neighbors are being forthcoming. Right? No, because obviously no one wants to give up that. No one wants to give up that, right? So Admo Omer, Yilech Lo Tzara. Admo says, look, since we have to use logic, figure out what is the shortest way to get into this field, and let's assume there was a previously established right of way. The Chum say no. Yipna Lo B'Derech B'Mei Amana or Yitzach Ba'avir. You have a choice. You have a choice. Either go ahead and pay $5, whoever brings to negotiate with you, or fly. Right? In other words, right? Okay, right? Or fly. Figure out a way to fly. Right? So again, this is actually, come say, listen, Ruben, you went overseas, you lost your information. The burden is on you. So pretty much, again, no one has to do anything for you. So you're going to have to figure out a way to negotiate for $5 right of passage. That's analyzed. So my time is Rabbi. Shabbat Gaon. I don't understand. What's the logic of the Rabbanon? So everyone said, the reason why the Rabbanon's position doesn't make sense is if there's one thing we know, it's that what? It's that what? Ruben had a right of way. He had a right of way. Right? Listen, I'll tell you this, but the right of way, even today, I don't know if this is about the right of way agreements are like, you would think it should be the simplest part of a real estate transaction. It's incredible hard to execute right of way agreements. That's fascinating. In any event, so Umar says, as far as I understand, obviously he has a right of way. This was his field. He used the field. He was getting in and out of his field, so there was a right of way agreement. So I'm going to say, listen, logically, he's going to take the easiest path. So that's the path he had. That's logical to that, right? And we know around, that's this. You don't shoot the I gave it away a little bit, I'm sorry. Shoot the I've got up in the other I gave it away. In other words, this is a landlocked field. There's 4 different people. So they'll say, what's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is, if you can imagine what it is, it's that evidence that she's my labor for the Jewish neighbor, so beautiful. And then he goes to everything we want. It's fine. That was way too real. Right there for 2. No, you're either 3, 4. So they're saying, the problem is, each has the ability to deflect it to the other. So this is one of these interesting cases where we know right of way exists, but we can't figure out a way to enforce it against any one particular party. If that's the case, then again, why does Admon say that Ruben could seemingly seize the shortest right of way? Particularly, you have 4 people who bought their own respective fields before other people, or for that matter, 4 people who bought their fields from one person. Everyone agrees in that case, each party could deflect to someone else. Keeply, Gemara says, he says, keeply, the is not like this one. This is this. The asim harba. So watch this. I will say, let's say now all 4 fields, all 4 of the landlocked fields, or the landlocked fields, are all owned by one person. Right? So you've got Reuben in the middle, and all 4 of the surrounding fields are owned by one person. That will say what? Bought it from 4 individual owners. So in this case over here, we're calling Shimon. Shimon now owns the 4 fields which surround Reuben's field, but Shimon bought it from 4 independent people. Watch this. So Admon saw that you come up and back and take that back. So Admon said, listen, Reuben can go to Shimon. So Shimon, give me a right away. You know that I own a right of way. You can figure out what I own it, so give it to me. There's the English. Rabbanon said, listen to this. Shimon can say something like this. Shut up. Maybe quite quiet. You know, if you make problems to me, now you show my right, but that's a dish to you. So this Shimon can say to Reuben, here's the deal. If you want to negotiate, you're going to make problems. I'm going to return the land to the previous 4 owners. It's going to be owned by 4 independent people. And then the one for those saying, Reuben, you'll never be able to get the right of way. Why? Because each of them could deflect you to the other. So if you want to negotiate, you can negotiate. But if you're going to claim Magiali, right, something's owed to me, I'll simply go ahead and return the land and we'll be stuck forever. Incredible. So the Gemara says, So I'm sorry. Who Damanu tell us quickly? Finish off the sukkah. Who Damanu? A guy says who Damanu? Tikla lebras. Listen to this. A guy, Ruben, is about to die. Right before he dies, he says, "I want my daughter to inherit the palm tree." He's giving a palm tree to his daughter. Azul Yasmin, when the first saying, there's a Ruben dies, and the sons went ahead and divided up the estate, but didn't give the palm tree to the daughter. אז יוסף דגל, חזי לא יאמר לדיקה. עכשיו יוסף לא נאמר, אני מust listen. But Yosef wanted to say that I said that this is the Mishnah. Why recognize? Because no one wants to go ahead and confront the country. Right? And each son could say what? Each one could say what? No, not from my portion, from your portion, from his portion, from his portion. I'm going to buy you, it's not a good comparison. Hasn't got like the kind that's immaculate. So let's listen to this. Here's the difference. So let's say in the case of the right of way, the right of way really only does exist on one field. When it comes to the daughter's right to a country, that is the right that defines upon all of their inheritance portions. So therefore, my takanasai, what should we do? What they should do is give her a palm tree, and then redivide the estate minus the palm tree. That's what should happen. Okay, we'll say very quickly. Sorry, one more minute we'll stop. Let's stop for the end for today. We'll just pick up with this very last piece of information. I tried. Okay, we'll say Shkoyach. Again, great week ahead of us. Amen. Hashem. Shkoyach. All right, come on, good day. All right, guys, say good morning, let us begin. Hashem, a great visit us to enter into our last week of the Sabbath Sudas. I want to go ahead and begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this ministry. Thank our commentary sponsors for the month of Tishrei, to thank Dr. Linda Weinberg, Sarah Lady Brown, Studio, Nina, and Dr. Nancy Dedicate Insurance Month, loving memory of their husband, father, and Dr. Paul Weinberg, parents, Moshe, Ben, Abraham, and Debbie. Thank I also stand up to dedicated usually the Shivanis Susha and the executive space of everyone who has been established Avram Zeisman, the creation of the Isaac grandmother, of his grandfather, Abraham, Ben Aaron, Tzvi, and Shield. Honor of Shiva, and Elliot, Shmuel, and Shia Pepper, in honor of Ari Roman, and all the best for the show. Also, to thank our Dr. Sponsors for today. Alan and Andrew Stellis, in honor of the Bas Mitzvah of their granddaughter, Zilla Rosalie, which grow the Torah and the souls of the entire family. Also, with that, let us begin very exciting. This is a very exciting Gemara in general, and also to recognize very beautiful news like this for the best. We are finishing the Sefta on Rosh Chodesh, so we're ending things, beginning things, closing out for this Tishrei, beginning Kashmir. Kashmir event, Hashem is such excitement in the Sefta. So let's begin. Today's daf is Kuf Ches 109. We are picking up with Rosh Hashem on the bottom of Kuf Ches 7 days. 108. We really left off. We left off yesterday after the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says as follows: a person knows the custom. It's a very interesting case. Someone promises money to his son. An age-old story, right? So someone promises money to his son. Like I said, in this particular case, what's unfolding over here is like this. Essentially talking about a dowry. So imagine for a moment that Reuben is marrying Rachel. Rachel's father promises to Ruvain some amount of money. And what happens? Pasha lost Harega. And then the father-in-law extends his foot. So also, what does it mean extends his foot? So again, extends his foot means the father-in-law doesn't pay. Father-in-law doesn't pay. So Rachel's father doesn't pay the dowry. Now look at that. Pasha lost Harega. Russian saying of the Amar, no age, Shani Chashlik Valak, Tol Tit Sha'al Gabi Rabbi. So this is interesting. This comedic expression of extending the foot means essentially, I'm giving you nothing, take the dirt that's on my shoe. Take the dirt. Now, in general, what this sounds like is the father-in-law is intentionally not giving his son-in-law the money. But the truth is, the priest doesn't have to be set up that way. That's just the way that's what the Mishnah is saying. So, Portugal is right here. Take the dirt that's on my foot. I'm not giving you any money. The point over here is, father-in-law promised money, and now is not delivering. So I say, now the problem we're in is what? Kiddushin has already taken place. Kiddushin has already taken place. So Reuven was already Mekadosh Rachel. Yisrael has not yet been done. Father-in-law indicates that whatever the situation is, he cannot, he will not pay the money. Once the Rachel happens to the class, they should actually have been Yosha. The Chachamim say, ultimately again, literally she has to sit there until her hair grows gray, which means she's stuck. Rachel's stuck. That, in other words, at this point in time, the control is in Reuven's hands, and either he can make a choice to marry her, right, or ultimately just wait and do nothing until her father pays her. After all, again, there was an agreement that was made. Rachel's father is not honoring the agreement. So again, Reuven the Lord for a holding pattern for his father-in-law pays the agreement. Adonai says, "Before the Yishakona, Rachel should say to Reuven, so Amnon says like this. Rachel could say to Reuven, listen, I, Rachel, was going to promise you money. If I was going to promise you money, then you can hold it over my head. If you can hold it over my head, then you just essentially, hold me in this marriage until either I pay you or until I pay you. But again, Achshav, Sha'aba Pasad, Nani Omedasos, Okinos, Okidon. And she says, what do you want from me? My father comes. So hold you accountable, so you're going to punish me for my father's actions. So Reuben, you didn't marry me, right? You soon. So divorce me. So that says, I'm not going to go any to the Amnon. The Gemara says, I think Amnon is correct. So therefore, I'm like, fundamental importance. Once again, just to reframe the case. So Rachel's going to get married to Reuben. Rachel's father promises Reuben $10,000. Right? That's the agreement. That's the dowry. Reuben does Kiddush. Now, father-in-law says, I'm not giving you. I can't give you. I won't give you, whatever it is. The point is, he's not giving. So now, the Chachamim say, Reuven has every right to essentially hold Rachel in this marriage until her father decides to pay. And ultimately, if he doesn't pay, so then Rachel's going to grow old and still get Kiddushin.
I knew he was going to say that.
It's not right. Like, ultimately, I was about it, even if saying it's right, the Hannah just saying it's legal. Because this is technically a legal recourse that he has to force his father-in-law's hand. So Rachel says that, so Adon says that Rachel can say to Rachel, that's not right. I didn't come into this agreement with you. My father did. Why are you punishing me for the default of my father? Listen, don't keep me in limbo. Either marry me or divorce me. Rachel and Zakai, I think that Rachel follows Adon. Let's go. So now, listen to what I know. Mishnah does not reflect the view of the following pattern. As a which we don't know about the passage is the Sanya, Rabbi Rothschild, Yehuda, no Netflix, Adon, the Chomer, ala Pesach, knows the Pesach. Pasha Glas Harayel, she a holy Kisha Kona, Abba, Pasach Alai, Ma Ani, Yehoda Lasis. So this is very interesting. A different twist over here. In this price, I'm quoting the same case. Now in this case, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, posits that everyone agrees that a case with the father defaulted on the agreement he made, that Reuven can't hold Rachel hostage in this marriage. Now Rachel has every right to say, I didn't default, either marry me or divorce me, but don't keep me in this state. Sa'amana. So realizing that there was Tachamim and Amnon, Asher Poske he alatzma. I will say in the Bryce's version, when the father defaulted, everyone agrees that Reuben can't hold Rachel. I said, like, I just really need to choose. Everyone is willing to agree that on a conceptual level, a man should never hold his wife in his marriage. Right? That's never something that has our love. Why is the historical created the system of treatment in a way which seems to give the husband much more power, sometimes even absolute power? Everyone. That's a question that we're going to ask. We have to ask ourselves about question. And everyone comes. Everyone thinks that's why the halachas seem to really be slanted to give the man the power. But again, this is a legal discussion. So legal discussions sometimes do not enter into a arena of what is right. Right? We all know this. That we teach us to our kids. Just because something is mutter, right? Just because it's permissible does not mean it should be done. So again, we're talking about what's permissible, right? So Chachamim say again, it's permissible for him to use the marriage as leverage to go ahead and extract money from his father. It's legal. It's legal. Is it right? Is it right? Of course it's not right. Of course it's not right. Right? So it's just important to understand that. They know everyone does, but sometimes you just think that, like, guys who get older, especially, we learn that even when everyone knows something, it's still important to say. And then I said, by the way, this thing, we're all learning. It's not that design of marriage, again, should never ever be used as a leverage. That should never be used as a mechanism to extract something that a husband. Like, it's not that Chazal, it's not that Baruch wants, it's not that Chazal wants. And the truth is, nothing good ever comes from holding another human being, and nothing good ever comes by using halacha as a means of expression. Okay, but back to our scenario. Listen, so again, so the Maisa, has a different view on this, right? So in the Braisa's version, that Chachamim and Admon both agree that Allah where it was the father who made the financial arrangement with Ruben, and now the father's defaults. Again, default doesn't pay whatever it is. So everyone agrees, and from Israel Yehuda, that Allah says to you that you are marrying a person. But you cannot keep him in this thing. So what's the machlokas? What's the machlokas? What happens if Rachel promised to leave him money? Right, so before they do Kiddushin, Rachel says to Reuben, listen, you Mekadosh me, and if you're Mekadosh me, I'm going to give you $10,000. Okay, so now what happens? Reuben's Mekadosh Rachel, and then what happens? Rachel doesn't pay. Won't pay, can't pay, doesn't pay. So let's say, now watch this. Shacham becomes a teacher after having no shah. The Chachamim say, listen, Rachel, Reuben is not distinguished between the sin and the until you figure this out. So you can go into a holding pattern over here until you, Rachel, figure out how to satisfy the obligation you are Admon says, before the Yishuk Omar, just listen to this. Admon says, so what did she say in this case? This is great. Before the Yishuk Omar, Kisura Anisha Abonose. She says, no. When I said, I'm going to give you $10,000, I figured the same bank that has been bent over my life up until this point in time. Right? It's incredible. No credit limits, right? No pre-qualifications, nothing. I figured the same bank that has taken care of me my entire life is going to take care of me now. So she said, I said that I was going to pay you. But again, I automatically assume that it was my father who was going to go out and pay for this taking care. Ba'achshav she'ein abonosim alai, ma'an yichol la'asos. So she says, what do you want from me? I guess, in other words, what Allah says, I'm not purposely being difficult or anything. I never had the money to back up this promise, right? I never had the money to back up the promise. It was always going to be my father. Now my father doesn't want to pay. Don't put me hostage in this relationship, either marry me or divorce me. So I just want to point out what he said. He knows now explaining that there's two versions of this machlokas. In our Mishnah's version, right? The Machlokes case is where the father of the bride, the father of Rachel promised and then doesn't pay. Chachamim say, okay, Reuben can wait, Reuben can do that, Reuben go to a holy pattern until the shver pays off. Like Admon says, she could say to him, this is not my fault. like that, either divorce me or marry me, but don't go and keep you in this whole state. Like, Rice now says, no. In that case, when the father defaults, everyone agrees that Rachel Kishar living here divorce me or marry me, is that he didn't divorce. Let's come out for this case. The Rachel promises the letter. So the Chachamim say, listen, Rachel, you made a promise. Make good on the promise. You don't make good on the promise. We don't have under obligation for it. You go into a holding pattern. Admiral says, no. When Rachel says, I made the promise, I'm giving my father. I was going to my father. So ultimately, don't hold it against me. Either marry me or divorce me. Incredible. I'm going to go. Rabbi says, and therefore saying the Bryce also, we're going to go and he has to be Abba. Again, in the Bryce, you have Rabbi agreeing with the Tana, let's analyze this. When is this so? When is this so safe to tomorrow? Rabbi Marin, Dola. I'm not quoting. Or say, when is all of this said? Right, exclusively the Bryce. Like, you can remember the goat form. But you make it Hema, with a minor, we will force it, we will force it. So the Lord says, force who? Force you to do what? If ultimately at the end of the day they come out forcing the father to pay off, so they'll say, it makes much more sense to force the father in a case of the Gdola than it does to force him in a case of the Ketana. Why? Because if we're talking about a case of the Ketana, promised money. Right, Rachel is promised money to you. Let's see how rapid you wait on that promise. Not fair. Right, so if you're talking about a case where you're forcing the father to pay out, it makes no sense to force the father to pay out in a case where the Gdola brother made a commitment. So the Gemara says, you don't know how they play by it. Ella Amarava hoping the foul leaving out. Now the Rabbi says, no. What it means is he's forcing the husband to give it out. So it's like, I love when I say, tell me a case of a Kitana. How's the root of the Kitana? And the commitment of the Kitana, ultimately, again, not binding. But I love when I say a case of the Kitana, will force the husband to give it out. We'll see how that plays out in the Rambam just a little bit. I'm going to read some of this. Let's finish this. I'll go back to the Rambam. So this to this. So Amar Rav Yitzchak ben Elazar Mishul B'Chizkiah. Some of them say that we are raw and it's the Amar. So we're saying now we're going back to the Mishnah. Any time that you find that what the Gemara says, right? Any place where you find that the Gemara says halacha follows Amon, halacha follows. Halacha follows. Already Rabbi Rothschild. Give me a good Raisa. It's actually even in the Raisa just in the Mishnah. Anyways, now we're saying whenever the Gemara says the halacha follows Admon, the halacha follows Admon. So is that true just in a Mishnah? And the Bible says, well, did I say just in a Mishnah? Listen to what I'm saying. I said any place means what? A Mishnah or a Brisa. Any time that the Gemara says the halacha follows Admos, the halacha follows Admos. Incredible. I'm going to say on the Gemara, based on halacha Yotzei. Right? Ultimately, so listen to this. Now, what he's saying is in the Rabbi, in the two situations, ultimately again, where, based on Shabbat Hanan, Yotzei, right? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that halacha follows Hanan, Shiva Gam Shana Admon in halacha Yotzei, but ultimately again, the 7 cases where Admon said the halacha, and the Gemara said that the halacha like Admon, the halacha does not follow Admon. So that's what it is. Even now, there's a meaning like this. The two halachas that Hanan brought down, and ultimately again, Yosef, those who trust like Hanan, the halacha follows them. The Shivadam Shana Admon in halacha Yosef, and if Yosef, of the 7 cases that are brought up in the name of Admon, the halacha neither follows Admon, nor like the ones who trust like Admon. I'm going to use something that wasn't this year. Welcome to Shomar of the Gemara, Ron has given Admon halacha. We just said before, any time that the Gemara said, I see the words of Admon to be correct, that's halacha follows of the Gemara. The halacha follows of the Gemara. Admon, and those who pass the halacha is what it means to say. They burn Shana Hanan halacha Yosef. In the two situations where Hanan said, halachas, the halacha follows him, and those who custom like him. First one, I say, Shiva Gam Shana Admon in halacha Yosef. So it's like the 7 cases where Admon brought down this halacha. Halacha does not follow him. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, in halacha kiyotze gadala, and halacha doesn't follow those two quotes. Hakimoso, halacha b'kili. It sounds like there's just Admon by himself that the halacha would follow him. But Rabbi Yitzchak doesn't treat the discuss because they understand in this instance like all these missionaries. There is Admon stating halacha, and then we have the Gamliel weighing in. That's the halacha follows halacha. The Gemara now suggests the universal distinction between when Admon says the halacha himself versus when you have Rabbi Rothschild coming along and saying, oh, the halacha follows it. The Amar of Yitzchak and Elazar is made this year. And nothing Shamar Rabbi Rothschild wrong as with the Amar halacha to so but you just said whenever Rabbi Rothschild says, I see the words of Admon to be correct, like the halacha follows him. So the Gemara says, Amar is no, Amar no. It sounds like the halacha only follows Admon when Rabbi Rothschild voices his support. But if Rabbi Rothschild doesn't voice his support, then the halacha won't follow Admon. Halacha goes on to say, based on Shama Shanan, halacha Yosef, that is going to say, in this situation, the two things that Hanan said about the halacha, in the two cases where Hanan told the halacha, Yosef, the others supported him, ultimately, again, halacha follows him. Shiva Dvarim, Shama Admon, Yishman Shalach Yosef, Yosef, Yishman Shein halacha Yosef, Elok Yosef, the Chosi. But by Admon, there are some situations where halacha and halacha don't follow him. Other times that the halacha will only follow him when he's quoting in the name of others. When one level, Gamliel, Ron is to the Admon, halacha Kimoso, but as any place Rabbi Gamliel said, the halacha follows Admon, the halacha follows Admon, but not necessarily in the other cases of Admon. So the Gemara is essentially just trying to go back and try to figure out, do you find the principle that can apply to the rulings of Admon and Hanan? As I said, we're going to see the halacha and Isa. There's no overarching principle. In fact, each of these cases are reckoned independent. Just like I said, halacha and Isa, let's close out the sugya. I agree with my this is really a great case. Money's promised, and what happened? Money's not paid. The only problem is, at the time of default, what's the status of the marriage? The status of marriage, Kedushin has already been done. So now we have a problem. So you will say, if you default before Kedushin, fine. So then what? Or get married. Everybody go home. That's it. The problem we have over here is the default happens after Kedushin before Nisur. Furthermore, two cases of default. What are the two cases of default? Case A, father default. Case B, brother, daughter, wife default. Was a machlokas Admon Kashalim. Then there's a further machlokas Mishnah and the Brayso as to whether machlokas is that. So I say, here we go. Rabbi Basnitz, Elchos Ishos, Parak Chaf Yume, Halacha Tes Sai, and let's just say, I just say, a couple weeks ago, Rabbi Ishos and Rambam and Rabbi Shochanara. So which is not going to be from Rambam and Shochanara casting the same way. In general, which Gareth as the Rambam, that the Rambam's formulation of halacha is nothing much truer to the text of the Gemara. So when you're just trying to understand halacha l'maisa from the Gemara, the lesson of the Rambam often adheres you to the sugya much more, whereas the Shulchan Aruch already is a distilled version of the halacha. So again, the bottom line is say the same thing. Listen to what the Rambam says. Here we go. Great case. Haposik bos nefasno. So this is great. So here's how the Shulchan sets up the case. Right? So what happens? Rachel's going to marry Reuben. Rachel's father, we'll call him Yaakov. Right? Rachel's father commits $10,000 to Rachel's husband, to Reuben. But Allah ha'av l'medina acharos. The father relocates to another country. Sorry? Country. Another place. He goes out. Right? Behold, he lomer labal, and he go pasaki alatzim. Ma'an yichol l'rasos. O prunos belong to no, O patrain begat. So says, number one, we constantly like Admon in the Mishnah. When it was the father who defaulted, Rachel says to her husband, listen, I didn't keep you with. You either divorce me or marry me. Right? But don't keep me in this one. So they say that's halach and nice number one, like Admon in the Mishnah. Aval, is husky the halatzma, the husky the halatzma, the yada. So let's say interestingly now Allah Lamaisa, we do possibly like the woman in the Bryce's case. If she is the one who made the commitment, then ultimately she has to figure out a way to honor it. And he has no obligation to do anything until she figures out how to honor this commitment. Also, remember again, this is where she made the commitment. Remember, Admon's out to her. Was that, remember again, what was Admon's out to her? What was that for? I didn't promise. I know it was me, and I'm an extension of my father, right? In other words, so when I said I promise to do my father, so what I'm not asking is like the coming from the crisis case, namely that when she makes the commitment, Rachel herself makes the commitment to Ruben, and then defaults, Ruben can keep a holding pattern of fiduciary that she comes up with the money, and ultimately again doesn't have to either marry her or divorce her. Once again, this is the legal rule. Moral, ethical. Should a man ever keep a woman in a relationship over money? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, if she says, give me more time, I'm happy to go and try to figure out that's fine. She wants to know. But once again, this is the legal ruling, not the moral, ethical, or the institutional ruling. So it says, Allah for myself, you can't like Adnan the Mishnah, therefore again, if father defaults, Ruben can't hold Rachel in a relationship. If Rachel defaults, he has the ability to go into a holding pattern. Incredible. Mishnah Bosai, very interesting case. Only Allah saw the Mikazon. It's just let me give you the background. Let's take a look at Rashi. First Rashi in the Mishnah. It's Rashi in the Mishnah. So let's say in the short lines of Rashi, 2, 4, 6, 7 lines into the short lines. Rashi says, Only Allah saw. Watch this. This is fascinating. Moving Ma'arer al Sadaship Yad Shimon. So it says, here's the case. Shimon has a field. Reuben is claiming, the field belongs to me. It was stolen from me, and you bought it illegally. Now again, he's not accusing Shimon of being complicit in the theft. He's just saying, Shimon, you think you're in the field is really large. Okay, fine. Now watch this. Reuben Ma'arer al Sadaship Yad Shimon. From a lady Shema from the top doesn't remain. Okay, so here's the case. Right? You got Reuben, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon is in current possession of a field that he bought from Levi. So Levi sold Shimon a field. Reuben says, Shimon, that field you had, it's my field. It's my field. Levi stole it from me and sold it to you. Okay, here's the wrinkle. The Mishnah says, Basar means, it says that when Levi sold the field to Shimon, he drew up a document, and one of the witnesses on the bill of sale is Reuben. So Reuben is a witness. Reuben is a witness on the sales document from Levi to Shimon, and now Reuben, who's one of the witnesses, says to Shimon, father of the field is stolen. So let's say, so now, how do this read? Right, what's going on exactly? Right, so Reuben is claiming, so Shimon, the field you bought from Levi, Levi stole it from me and sold it to you, and now we look at the paperwork and we see that Reuben himself is one of the witnesses on the bill of sale from Levi to Shimon. So what's the halacha? Admon Omer, Emma says it's not a problem. You say to Reuben, so obviously that's Reuben, I don't understand. If the field, if Levi stole the field from you, then why would you agree to sell the shtar the field? Why would you agree to sell a bill of sale? Admon says it's a perfect answer for this. Shini Nerachi, Halisha Kashin Nerachi. So let's say it's clear. Because Reuben could say, listen, Levi is a gazda. Right? Levi is a thief. Right? Levi is a strong guy. I knew I never had any chance of getting my kid back from Levi. Shimon, I know you. You're a reasonable guy. So I figured if I could get the field away from Levi to use Shimon, now I have a better chance of getting back my stolen field. That's why I agreed to sign on the bill of sale so I could get it out of Levi's hands into your hands. Incredible. It was another so I'm just saying, like, this is so great. This is incredible. So this is now listen to this. But from the fun say, no, cut it out. Even as if we so. Well, what are you talking about? Reuben, again, if you come forward with a claim that the field that Shimon currently has is stolen from you, that's fine. That's what I say. Once you're signing on, once you're not a party, but once you're a witness to the transaction, you've lost any right to claim that this property belongs to you. Even as if you so. So it's a figure of Rashi. Actually, even as you so, the whole of the chasam, hold the shit in your essentially what that comes things like this. The act of signing on a document, or that is witnessing a document of sale, a transaction, sale transaction, is effectively saying what? This field has nothing to do with it. You're giving up any rights to the field. So there was like from like this. On the flip side, I saw similar affair. Sorry, I saw similar affair. So let's say look at this case, look at Rashi. I saw a muhsik but similar affair. שלא מוכן לידי זה האור עליו, אלא לאיש אחר, היה מוכר סודה מצד זה, ומיצה לו ארבעות מצרי הסודה. וחסר בו במצרים, מיצה פרוני סודה שלי, ועשה סודה זה סודה. Let's say, now watch this case. So let's say for a moment that Ruben now owns the disputed field. Right? I'm sorry, Shimon, right? So Shimon owns the disputed field. So now, what does Shimon do? Shimon sells another piece of property. Right? So let's say now, let's call the disputed field A. Field A. Right? So same case, right? Ruben bought the field from, Shimon bought the field from Levi, right? Then there's Ruben. Ruben, of course, is claiming that Levi sold the field to him, and then sold it to Ruben. Sold it to Shimon. Sorry. That's one more time. I'm going to get this right this time. Okay, so let's say, so again, remember, Levi sells a field to Shimon. Right? In the back of all of this, we have Ruben claiming that Levi really sold that field to him. And now, all right, stole last time. Right? Levi sells the field to Shimon. Good, beautiful. Ruben now is claiming that the field that Shimon bought from Levi was stolen from him by Levi. Okay, so that was case one. And case one is where it turns out that Ruben himself is an aid on the bill of sale from Levi to Shimon. Okay, so now what do we do with that? So again, according to Admon, so if I come and say, that's it, you lost anything, you signed on the sky, you lost anything. Admon says, no, there's still another claim. You can claim, you make a claim, it's easier for me to get it back from Shimon than it was from Levi. Fine. Case two is Ruben, Shimon is selling the field. Shimon is so let's call disputed field to field A. Shimon is selling field B. Field B. Fine, no problem. So let's say, often the way when you would sell a field, if there was a field that was next to other fields, the way you would identify the field that you were selling is by identifying the other fields all around it, right? I'm selling the field B that is bordered by fields A, D, E, and this field. Shimon is selling field B. But in the document of sale, its reference, it says field B borders on my other field, field A. Field A. So in this case, field A is being used as a demarcation point, as a border. So right, field A, the dispute is not being sold at all. But it's being used to identify field B, which is the transaction. So Ruben is using field A, right? Sorry, Shimon, thank you. Shimon is using field A as just to identify the border of the field that is being sold. Now, those are Ruben is signing on this document also. Ruben is signing on this document. So now, here's the shaila. Now, in this transaction, in this document, so when Shimon is selling field B, selling field B, he's also what? So to speak, solidifying his ownership over field A, because he's using field A to identify one of the borders of field B. Ruben is claiming that this field A was originally his, signing on his document. So now both says, now what's going to happen after this is over? So now Ruben is going to want to come back and say to Shimon, by the way, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi who subsequently sold it to you. In which case says no. Saw Simon la'achar even as so. At the end of the day, even Admon agrees, which is interesting. Even Admon agrees in this case In this case, that once Reuven signed on this type of star, which used the contested field as a border for the field being sold, everyone agrees that Reuven has relinquished any further rights to claim that the field is his. Okay, interesting. Let's go. I'm Rabbi. Okay, let's go back to that first case. Great. Let's go back to the first case. But that's right. It's good. They'll say so. No, because the truth is, I realize that this we actually have to stay on target because the truth is, maybe it's just Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So the truth is, Tuesday and Wednesday stopping are a little bit, and Monday, a little bit long. So we gotta stay, and we only have 45 minutes on Tuesday, right? So, but we're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. So let's say, so here we go. Let's say, so I'm gonna buy advices. Let's say now we're focusing on this one. So once again, let's just get back to case number one. Right? Shimon purchases a field from Levi. So there's a document, right? And the document that says that Levi sold the field to Shimon. One of the witnesses is Reuven. Reuven then comes after the sale is complete, and Reuven comes to Shimon and says, Shimon, the field is mine, Levi stole it from me. What? You signed on the document. So again, Chachamim say, sorry, Reuven, you no longer have any claim. Because halakha myself, you signed on the document. Sorry, you were a witness. We're done. Almon says no. Reuven has a claim. Yes, I signed the document in order to get it out of Levi's hands. Your hands shouldn't be the fact that I have a better chance with you of getting back my life. Fine. So Rabbi Abai says, Lo Shalom Ela 8. That's only true. Like all of this is only true. If halakha myself, Reuven signed is the machlokas, is only if Reuven signed as a witness. About Gayon Lo Reuven has his son. This is fascinating. So let's say if this is really incredible. So if halakha myself, Reuven served as a Gayon, as a judge, everyone agrees that he could still make the claim of theft, even though he was the judge over the back. What is that? Why do you need a judge in this case? Look at that about Gayon. שהוא ושטר מכיר ובזמנו במשפט קיום שטרס שהעידים באים ומקרא פסק ידם והדיין הם כוס משטר דינם נפקו לכוונה והסיבי סעד יחסים לזרע והשם. So watch this. Let's say again they come to Bezdin to certify that Kiyum Shtaros. We've spoken about certification of documents saying like what's one of the best. What is Kiyum Shtaros? The danger of documents. I want to even halacha document, right? You have a signed shtar. So that's incredible. The problem is somebody go ahead and forge. Right? Can you forge a shtar? Can you forge a shtar? Sure. So there's a concept of shtar certification. We call it kiyum shtaros. What's the concept of kiyum shtaros? You bring your shtar to Bezdin, right? The Bezdin takes a look at it. The Bezdin brings in testimony, or brings in the witnesses, certify that is that is their signature. You write a little pen clip, right? You write a little either on the document itself or an attached document, and done. The shtar is certified. So this is incredible. So Abai is just like this. The Machlekes Almon and the Chachamim in the first case of the Mishnah is only where Reuven signed as a witness in the transaction. And here's a diamond on the Bezdin that certified the document that was not below his ability to later on claim that the field was stolen from him. Why, Rabbi Rothschild? This is actually fascinating. We tell you that before, Ein ha'idin chosmi ala shtar ala imkin karur. Aval, on the base, Aval ha'bayonu chosmi afa hu shalom karur. This is absolutely incredible. When you witness a transaction, like when you sign as an aide, they'll say, what are you signing on? What are you signing on? You're signing on the validity of the transaction. Like that's what you're signing on. That I witness this transaction. This transaction is binding, valid, and legal. When you're a dayan for kiyum shtaros, they'll say, what are you certifying? What are you certifying? Signatures. You are not certifying the transaction. In fact, the dayan, sometimes like kiyum shtaros, the dayanim aren't even reading what's in the documents. Like because I'm not certifying the transaction. I have no idea about the transaction. Kiyum shtaros are there just simply to certify the signatures on the document itself. But it has nothing. It's so fascinating. So fascinating. So you could have a situation of Kimshtaris, which makes sense, I would say, because otherwise, Kimshtaris requires a whole certain of the transaction. So what's the point of the shtar? So what does the shtar do? The shtar, right, the Eidos on the shtar locks in the transaction. Kimshtaris certifies the signature. So this is incredible. So we'll say, in a case where Reuben was a dying for Kimshtar, so now let's play this out. Right, so Levi sells a field to Shimon, and they're about to draw the document, and now they want to bring the document to Beis Din for certification. Reuven is one of the Dayanim on the Beis Din to certify. Right, Reuven's Beis Din certifies the document, and then after it's certified, Reuven says to Shimon, by the way, the field is stolen from me. Everyone agrees in that case, Reuven has a valid, and that's a valid. If we say Reuven has a valid claim, obviously saying something was stolen from you is not a claim. Right? I mean, it's a claim, but it means is Reuven now has the right to what? Pursue that claim. Right? So again, why? And everyone agrees in that case. Everyone agrees in that case. Why? Because Reuven's acting as a guy for Kim Shtaris has nothing to do with the transaction. All Reuven is doing is just saying, oh yeah, the signatures we can say with the speed, you guys recognize the signatures, fantastic. So sign it up, right? And then we're done. Certified, we're done. So everyone agrees in that case that in no way erodes his claim to go ahead and pursue the stolen, like the stolen claim. The claim belongs to the stolen. In case, then he's a witness to the actual transaction, sale from Levi to Shimon. In that case, again, part of signing on a shtar is what you are claiming the transaction itself is valid. When you say claim the transaction is valid, you can't go ahead and not claim that same parcel is stolen from you. Admon says, yes, I can. The transaction was valid. In other words, yes, Levi sold to Shimon. At the end of the day, it's valid. Good. So says the Gemara. But I saw a similar act, right? Especially the next case the Mishnah was, but I remember again. Right? So same case, but let's say, not same case. In this case, Shimon the purchaser, Shimon the purchaser confessed the property with parcel A. Shimon is selling parcel B and uses parcel A to identify the borders of parcel B. Reuven himself signs on that shtar as well, and that as well. So Reuven signs on that shtar. The Mishnah says everyone agrees that after he signs on that shtar, he no longer has the right to pursue anything. Rabbi, those shara Allah. That's only true ultimately, I guess. Rashi said, "Lo la'achar, dafka nakat masnisin simon la'achar, aval asa hamuchsakta simon li'atzmo shayuven sa'ora." So listen to this. That's only true when what? When Shimon is selling the parcel to someone else. What happens if Shimon is selling the parcel to Reuven himself? Shimon is selling parcel B to Reuven. And I have to be in that sale, Shimon uses parcel A, which is the protested property, as a border identification. But ultimately, in that case, even though Reuven, right, even as circumcised, Reuven did not go ahead and lose out on his ability to reclaim parcel A. Why? The Amar, below Avdulay. This would say, I would not agree to this, or have a non-criminal receipt. But ultimately, again, Shimon would not sell the property. In other words, if I say, the thing of the is that if Shimon knows that Reuven is going to be claiming parcel A, he's going to be reticent to what? Sell a parcel B. So Reuven wants to buy parcel B. By lodge, my complaint now, very nice, I'm not going to get parcel B. Certainly, again, leaving aside parcel A. So the Gemara says, "Not use the part of it." So what could Reuven have done? He buy the Lemema Moga. So maybe what Reuven could have done is that it's only purchases parcel B from Shimon. Put aside the risk. So I'm purchasing parcel B from Shimon. So the transaction, Shimon is saying that parcel B, right, borders on Shimon's other parcel A. Guys, I just want to tell you, like a sidebar, I'll tell you guys, you might also is going to not saying anything else, he's going to lock down this transaction. Maybe that's what you should say, make him a go, not fall. Right, let him go. The says, yeah, that'll work really well. Chavra is safe. The Chavra is safe. This is your friend has a friend, and the friend of your friend has a friend. Which I guess is another way of saying, don't rely on anyone's confidentiality. So the nice again, if Ruben says something so to speak in confidence. So the witnesses, they're going to say something, and what's going to happen? It's going to cause the whole transaction of partially to cause the jeopardy. Good. You guys are as follows. So the cover is that who saw similar offer. So what says now listen to this. In this case, there's a different so the case over here is so let's go back. So what's like so this is just a unique case over here. So remember, let's go back. The Mishnah said that in a case where Reuven is now signed on a shtar, right, is a witness to a document, where Shimon is selling parcel B to another party, but in parcel B, he's using parcel A, the contested parcel, as one of the borders. And Reuven signs on that document, Reuven gives up his right to further to any more claim parcel A. That's only true. Now Abai gives a qualification. That's true if Shimon was selling it to another party. But if Shimon was selling it to Reuven himself, so Reuven doesn't object to the use of parcel A as a border, that's because Reuven doesn't want to call into jeopardy the whole transaction. Fine. So I go back to the original case. So let's go back to the Mishnah's original case. Right, so the Mishnah's original case, so Allah might say now, so Reuven is engaged on the shtar where Shimon is selling parcel B using parcel A as a border. So what happens? Here are the shepherds. So after the transaction happens, now what happens? So Reuben comes, by the way, parcel A is mine. Parcel A is mine. So what happens? Shepard, then he died. Reuben died. And so Reuben died. Mysterious process, right? Right? Reuben died after raising the objection to the ownership of parcel A. Okay. What happens? The oath of the trust. They'll say, so now again. So after Reuben passed away, right? Either Reuben made provisions for this beforehand, or the Bezin appointed an apotropos. Now there's an executor of Reuben's estate. Okay. So Asaf Petrova coming to Abayin. So the apotropos came before Abayin. Amalek saw similar. So this is now what happens. The apotropos is coming. Why is he coming? The apotropos is saying, listen. Before Reuven died, Reuven claimed that field A belongs to him. So the apotropos says, I am coming to follow up on that claim. I'm coming to follow up on that claim. Okay, so Abai says, listen, Abai says, there's no claim. Listen, Krishna. Amalei Asasim La'achar, even as a Kusar. We already learned this case. Reuven signed onto this document where Shimon used field A as a border identification. Says once you do that, you go out and relinquish all of your rights. Doesn't want to talk about. To which the apotropos says you're right, but Amar Ihava Avasam Yasmikayim Avakayim Amar Kalam Afarasisya. Very interesting. So I will say, so the apotropos says, no, Reuven is still alive, and Reuven would say yes. I agree. I signed on a document where Reuven used field A as a border to field B. It's really the only thing I was agreeing to was that perhaps Shimon owns a narrow strip of field A. A narrow strip of field A. That's what he owned. That's what he owned. So we can ask, anyway, Shabir Ka'amat, so that's a good point. Rabbi Yochanan, so we'll say it's actually very interesting. Very interesting. That the claim over here is that halacha, right? That if I go ahead, Rabbi Yochanan says, let's say I sold you a field, right? I field is mine, and the only thing I sold you in that field was the narrow strip. Such a claim could actually be believed. So the Gemara is supposed to see what's happening over here. In other words, Reuven signed on this document that where Shimon was selling the field to another party, Shimon was selling field B. The field B was sold with a border identification of field A. Reuven signed on it. After Reuven signed on it, the transaction happened. Reuven said, by the way, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi. After that, Reuven dies. Apotropos comes along and tries to sell up the affairs of the state, becomes a buyer. And Apotropos, listen, Reuven claimed this stolen field was his. Abai says, that's fine, field A was his. This is not time, but it's a Mishnah. Right? Reuven signed on that document. Selling that document, he said field A is a border for field B, he activated all rights to the field. To which the Apotropos says, perhaps if he was here, would have claimed all Shimon really owned in that field was just a narrow strip. That's what he was identifying as the border. To which Abai says, that's a good kind of. But ultimately again, you still should have to go ahead. So in other words, now Abai says the apotropis, even if that's a good claim, that's fine, but you still have to leave in Shimon's possession a narrow strip. So Habi Alei, Rizchad B'Tikvah. So let's say here's the problem. On that narrow strip, there was a line of conscience. Straight, that narrow border strip, pretty valuable. Pretty valuable. So it's even now says. So I know that you have a Abba, Abun, Yas Mikayim, Abatorim, Amar, Hazar people like Kafir, I know this is great. We have trouble about it. Abtroba says, if Ruben was alive, he can claim, while it's true that I sold that border strip back to Shimon, I then subsequently repurchased it. Abai says, Zok, Arei Shafir Kabot, saying, good, then Rabbi Yochanan, in Tan Ba'amar Chazak, V'lakafi, and then so we'll say, ultimately, again, even with the claim, I sold it, but then I repurchased it, which you believe. And we'll say, the reason that is because this is Rashi says, Pesh Asa, Pesh Shekiti. In other words, it will say, the case of yours is how, look at Rashi's Naaman, here's the case, just look at this totality. Naaman, Pesh Asa, Pesh Shekiti, the Me'achash, Eden, Shaisa, Shalom. So I will say, the case of the here is where, remember, Shimon sold the field, maybe sold the field to Shimon. Ruvain, and then again, it gets more complicated. But now what happens? So now you have Ruvain, now you have Shimon, just bring it all together. Here we go, bring it all together. You have Levi selling the field to Shimon, field A. Okay, fine. Now what happens? Shimon sells field B to another party. But in that transaction, he uses field A as a border identification. Ruvain signs on that shtar, that bill of sale that Shimon makes for the party of field B. Afterwards, what happens? Shimon, so Ruvain says, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Ruvain and sold to you, Shimon. So remember again, this is not often in the Mishnah, says we don't believe you. You sign on that document, we don't believe you. I will say, in this case, it's becoming a bit more complicated. In this case, what happens is, Ruvain goes ahead and claims the field is stolen. And not only that, Ruvain brings witnesses. He brings agents. That's Rashi's name in the Bible. He brings witnesses. Now we'll say, after he goes in with these witnesses, what happens? He dies. Okay, now what happens? Apotropis comes to Abai. Apotropis says, listen, I'm here to help him with his things. Abai says, there is no claim. It's a Mishnah. Ruvain signed on the document. Apotropis says that he has Aegis. Abai says, it's more second. Essentially, the Aegis is negated in the base of what? Ruvain's signature. In other words, once Ruvain signs on that document, he effectively signs what is right. Here's the Apotropis says, no. What you understand is, he actually went ahead and sold to Shimon a strip of land. Okay. So now what you're telling me is, when Ruvain signed the document, he wasn't yielding his rights to the rest of the field. What was he acknowledging? That Shimon owns a strip of land of field A that borders on field B. But that in no way he's yielding his rights to the rest of field A. That's good. But Abai says, okay, that's fine, so you can pursue your claim on the rest of field A. But what? But you have to go ahead and at least leave in Shimon's possession what? The strip of land. To which Apotropis says, but 1 second, he's going to the story. Ruvain bought back the strip of land from Shimon. He bought it back. To which Abai says, which is good, right? Okay, let's say, this is the passion, also passion, right? The only way we are about to sell this house is through Ruvain, right? In other words, right through Ruvain. We know about the sale. Without the sale, all you would have is what? People saying that the mice of the field was stolen from Ruvain. So now Ruvain, so to speak, was Apotropis telling us that a sale happened on the strip. Now Ruvain's further clarifying and telling us after the sale occurred, Ruvain bought it back from Shimon. It's a Pesha, also Pesha Hittifu. In this case, Ruvain / the Apotropis should be believed. It turns out that Ruvain should really walk the unit from, but as soon as we can prove this claim, that he should really be able also you can build those entirely, including the strip of palm trees. Rabbi is also what's the thing in the story? Rabbi is I man the Mocha Apatroba, Loki Ki Had Brother Africa, this was the last. Also, the entire takeaway is you gotta get an Apatroba like this. Right? Also, this is you gotta surround yourself with good people. Like this Apatroba Rabbi says, knew exactly what he was doing. Good. So we'll say, so for our purposes, I love the nice stuff. How do we possible? I was like, this is a complicated case. That is a very complicated case. Remember again, was like what we have essentially that in this case is a couple of different cases. Just because I'm just going to tell you quickly. Rama Pascal, this is in Kirkos, Owen, Arek Peszayin, Halachas Halach days. We don't have time for everything. I'm going to leave out the Kellen case. I'm just going to give you the Mishnah. Here it is. Reuben Shafaka the Shimon Saga. Reuben sent the fields. Reuben sold the field to Shimon. The higher lady, yes, that is I'm going to keep a lot of it, right? So let's say, so Levi sold the field to Shimon, and Reuben was one of the witnesses on the shtar. And what happens? Subsequently, right? Reuben claims after the transaction occurs. Reuben claims that what? That Allah Kalamaisa, Levi stole it from me. Ain Shogun. Rambam Pascal is like, no. I remember again. You're going to claim, yes, I signed on it because I wanted it to go from Levi to Shimon because I feel a better chance getting a field back from Shimon and from Levi. But Rambam says, case closed. Case closed. Allah for myself. Right, Allah for myself. There's absolutely nothing to talk about once you are party to the transaction. Right, once you are a witness on that shtar, you have effectively ceded and yielded any right that you have to take that field elsewhere. However, the Rambam says that Reuben acted as a dial. Shtaros, he does not yield or cede any future rights. Again, we're back to the distinction of the Gemara. That Allah Kalamaisa, an aid certifies the transaction. And there you're going to certifies signature. So they will say, Allah Kalamaisa, don't trust like Admon there's more, much more. Again, both those times Nika, Arab Kazai, Hanefas, Halu, and days. All of that for interesting but that's not Allah for the good. Mishnah, quickly. Mishnah, Allah for the Sayad, the Garab Sadir. So, again, it just gets better. Listen to this case. And also, by the way, you ask yourself, what does this have to do with Ksubas? Right, that's answer number one. That's answer number one. So remember again, the reason, just so you know, in all seriousness, the reason why we're doing this is because remember, the way this parak started off were with the rulings of Admon and Hanan. And remember again, it started off with a discussion about Mizonos. That's which is Ksubas. Now, let's say we're just going through all of their rulings. Watch this great case. Misha, Allah, watch this case. Reuben goes overseas. Now, Reuben owns a field. Now, we'll say, interesting enough, the case over here is Reuben's field is landlocked, which means that the only way he was ever able to get into his silver's house, he had a right of way. He had a right of way with someone. So what happened? So Misha, so we'll say, so now what's the problem? He comes back, he's been away for a while, can't remember the right of way. Where is my right of way to get into my field? And of course, as one can imagine, none of the neighbors are being forthcoming. Right? So because obviously no one wants to give up that. No one wants to give up that, right? So Admon Omer, Yelef Lo B'Ktsara. Admon says, look, since we have to use logic, figure out what is the shortest way to get into this field, and let's assume that was the previously established right of way. The Chum say no. Yikna Lo B'Derech B'Me'amana or Yiftach B'Havim. You have a choice. Either go ahead and pay top dollar, whoever's going to negotiate with you, or fly. Right? In other words, right? Okay, right? Or fly. Figure out a way to fly. Right? So say, so again, this is actually come say, listen, Reuben, you went overseas, you lost your information. The burden is on you. So pretty much, again, no one has to do anything for you. So you're gonna have to figure out a way to negotiate the top dollar right of passage. So that's not wise. So my time with Rabbanon, Shabbat Galan. So I understand. What's the logic of the Rabbanon? It's the reason why the Rabbanon's position doesn't seem to make sense is if there's one thing we know, it's that what? Reuben had a right of way. Right? Listen, I'll tell you something. The right of way, even today, the right of way agreements are like you think should be the simplest part of a fascinating. In any event, so the Gemara says, as far as I understand, obviously he has a right of way. This was his field. He used the field. He was getting in and out of the field, so there was a right of way agreement. So I'm noticing, listen, logically, he's going to take the easiest path. So just assume that's the path he had. What's logical, Rabbi? All right, you know what? That's this. Don't shoot before us. I gave it away a little bit. I'm sorry. Shoot before our God, but I gave it away. Whereas this is a landlocked field. There's 4 different people. So we'll say, what's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is, if you can imagine, right, when he comes back, everyone says, Shalom Aleichem, and Kiddush, it's so beautiful. And then he goes to neighbor number 1. Like, was mine right of way through here? No, not here. Like neighbor 2, no, not here either. 3, 4. So we'll say, the problem is, he has the ability to deflect it to each other. So this is one of these interesting cases where we know a right of way exists, but we really can't figure out which first they think the party. If that's the case, then again, why does Admon say that Ruvain is seemingly sees the shortest right of way? So he was on the Rava very quickly. Ba'arbad da'asimikah arbal. So ba'arbad da'asimikah had for the Amalek who you cannot see that. So let's listen to this. So you have 4 people who bought their own respective fields from 4 other people. Or for that matter, 4 people who bought their fields from 1 person. Everyone agrees in that case, party to deflect to someone else. Keep you. Gemara says, so keep me, where does not hold this on? Let's listen to this. The Asim Bash Arba. So watch this. Let's say now all 4 fields, all 4 of the landlocked fields, which are the landlocked fields, are all owned by 1 person. Right? So you've got Reuben in the middle, and all 4 of the surrounding fields are owned by 1 person. What I say, what? Bought it from 4 individual owners. So in this case over here, we're calling Shimon. Shimon now owns the 4 fields which surround Reuben's field, but Shimon bought it from 4 independent people. Watch this. So Admon said, so Admon said, listen, Reuben could go to Shimon. Give me a right away. We know that I own a right of way. So you can figure out what you own. I own it, so give it to me. Those limits. Rabbanon say, listen to this. Shimon can say to me like this. He shut up. It's going to be quite quiet. We know if Shimon comes to me, now he show my right, but that's a wish to me. So the thing is, Shimon can say to me, here's the floor. If you want to negotiate, negotiate. If you're going to have problems, I'm going to return the land to the previous 4 owners. It's going to be owned by 4 independent people. And therefore, what can I say? Reuben will never be able to get right of way. Why? Because each of them could deflect you to the other. So if you want to negotiate, you can negotiate. But if you're going to claim Magiali, right, something's owed to me, I'll simply go ahead and return the land and then you'll be stuck forever. Incredible. What the Gemara says. He says that. Who Damalu tell us quickly, finish off the sugya. Who Damalu, how a guy says, who Damalu did not live less. Listen to this. A guy, Ruben, is about to die. Right before he dies, he says, I want my daughter to inherit the country. He's giving a country to his daughter. Also, Yasmin, saying, so Ruben dies, and the sons went ahead and divided up the estate, but didn't give the country to the daughter. So Yosef Lamemar, and you must listen. So Yosef wanted to say that I said, let me say the Mishnah. Why recognize? But then I want to go ahead and come to the country. Right? And each son could say what? Each one could say what? No, not from my portion, from his portion, from his one. From his portion, I'm going to buy you, it's not a good guy. Awesome, so I can have that to it. So listen to this. Here's the difference. So when it comes to the right of way really only does exist on 1 field. When it comes to the daughter's right to a country, that is a right that provides upon all of their inheritance portions. So therefore, my takanayu, what should we do? What they should do is give her a palm tree, and then redivide the estate minus the palm tree. That's what should happen. Okay, we'll say very quickly. I'm sorry, just give me a little 1 more minute and we'll stop. Speaking of LeBron, actually, I will say, we'll stop over here for today. We'll just pick up with this very last piece of news. I tried. Okay, let's say Shkoyach. Again, great week ahead of us. Emir Hashem, Shkoyach. All right, everyone, have a great day, everyone. All right, I will say good morning, let us begin. Hashem, a great is it us to enter into our last week of the second Sukkot. I want to go ahead and begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Should thank our Talmud sponsors for the month of Tishrei, to thank Dr. Linda Weinberg, Sarah, Nikki Gratz, Julia, Rina, and Eve. Loving men for dedicating short this month, loving memory of their husband, father, and leader, Dr. Paul Weinberg, Eretz Moshe Ben Abraham David. Thank I always say, thank you for dedicating the school and discussing specifically for Shalita for Shivanis Pass. Yishan, Adam Salzman, the version of the outside of grandmother, and his grandfather, Abraham Ben Aaron, Svi and Shear, in honor of Kiva, and Elliot Shmuel and Shia Pepper, in honor of Ari Lerner, and all the best for the show. Beautiful. Let's say to thank our Dafyomi sponsors for today. Our Andrea Stellis, in honor of the Bas Mitzvah of their granddaughter, the Rosie Bloom, Row, the Torah Mitzvahs, in the Shabbos for our family, and all of the classes. Beautiful mess. So we'll see with that, let us begin very excited. These are very exciting Gemara in general, and also to recognize issues. Always beautiful news like this confluence of events. Alright, before finishing the Sefta, on Rosh Chodesh, so we're ending things, beginning things, closing out Chodesh Tishrei, beginning Teshuvah, and then Hashem is such excitement. Sefta, those are let's begin. Today, that is Kufas 109. We actually can have the Lord's Hashem on the bottom of Kufas cemeteries, 108B. 108B. We really left off. We left off yesterday at the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says as follows. A posik ma'os the Chesed. It's a very interesting case. Someone promises money to his son. An age-old story, right? So someone promises money to his son-in-law. And I will say, in this particular case, what's unfolding over here is like this. Essentially, we're talking about a dowry. So imagine for a moment that Reuben is marrying Rachel. Rachel's father promises Reuben some amount of money. And what happens? And then the father-in-law extends his foot. So what does it mean extends his foot? So again, extends his foot means the father-in-law doesn't pay. So Rachel's father doesn't pay his dowry. Now this is remember, Pashat law is halacha. Russian Zion the Amar Loish Sheinu Chashta Dvarav Tol Tit Sha'al Davi Rabu. This Hamidic expression of extending your foot, essentially, I'm giving you nothing. Take what's on my shoe. Now, in general, what this sounds like is the father-in-law is intentionally not giving his son-in-law the money. But the truth is, the case doesn't have to be set up that way. That's just the way that's what the Mishnah is saying. Suppose though, it's right over here. Pick the dirt that's on my foot. I'm not giving you any money. Point of the here is, father-in-law promised money and now he's not delivering. So it's like, now the problem we're in is what? Kedushin has already taken place. So Reuben was already in Kaddish Rachel. The Yisurin has not yet been done. Father-in-law indicates that whatever the situation is, you will not say the money. That's the halacha topic of test. Eshet Akshet Havin Rosha. The Chachamim say, ultimately again, literally she has to sit until her hair grows gray, which means she's stuck. Rachel's stuck. That, in other words, at this point in time, the control is in Reuben's hands, and either he can make a choice to marry her, right? Or ultimately just wait and do nothing until her father pays her. After all, again, there was an agreement. There was an agreement that was made. Rachel's father is not honoring the agreement. So again, moving the law to a holding pattern of his father-in-law pays the agreement. Adnan says, the holding you should tell her, Rachel should say, say to Ruben, so Admon says like this. Rachel could say to Ruben, listen, I, Rachel, was going to promise you money. I found you going to promise you money. Then you can hold you over my house. If you can hold you over my house, then you can essentially, hold me in this marriage until either I pay you or until I pay you. But again, Achshav, Sha'aba Pasach,